WCLN 1170 Radio and Cable Channel 16 are pleased to present We Should Know, hosted by J.W. Simmons, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative as we consider closely what we should know.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know is on there. I want to thank you for being with us. It's Tuesday, 2:30 each and every Tuesday. We come to you from Star Communications, Channel 16. We also air on WCLN Radio. There's a summation of this show each and every week in the Sampson Weekly newspaper. We've been very fortunate over the years to have some excellent guests on to bring you information about things that you need to know about or subjects that you maybe need to hear a bit more about and dig into a little bit deeper. Today we're talking with someone that you probably live around all day, and you probably know this fella. I'm sure you know his family and know a bit about him, Wellie Jackson. Wellie, thank you for being with us. Wellie, you grew up in the Keener area, as well as many people that we both know, and I've known you for a long time, since you were a young boy. Now you're a pretty big farmer as it relates to turkeys.
Yes, sir.
But you know, today I want to kind of get in to start with to talk a little bit about what I call the bread and butter of everybody, and that is agriculture. But you had a particular situation occur a couple of months ago, and it involved bread and butter, but it involved a couple of your turkeys.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Tell us about that.
I got to grow the presidential pardon turkey for 2019, and we carried them to Washington and presented them to President Trump, and that was a very, very good, unique experience. It sure was.
Well, it's fascinating because, you know, when I look back at history, this is something that's been going on for some time, but historically, when I look at it, a lot of the presidents would thank you for that turkey, but turkey would also be part of the dinner table.
Yes, sir. Ours were not. They were pardoned, and they are at Virginia Tech now. They are both operating at Virginia Tech. Sure.
So, you know, when people hear that, they think, well, you know, that's not really a big deal because you just grab a couple of turkeys off of your farm, you stick them in a truck, you run them up to D.C., Not true.
No,
not true.
These were very trained turkeys. I spent a lot of time with these turkeys, and if you were to come down there and see me some of these mornings, you would think I'd lost my mind. I got in the house with them. We built a special house for them, and I would get in there and read books to them. I would walk around with them. We had a soccer ball in there. I'd kick a soccer ball and watch them run from it, and watch videos with them, just trying to get them acclimated to people and the media and stuff like that. I'd get them out, walk them in the yard, get used to walking on grass, rocks, and stuff like that. And it was about a 4-hour day every day from about 8 weeks on till we carried them to, and they were 20 weeks old, so about 12 weeks.
How were those turkeys selected? I mean, you're talking thousands of turkeys. You got several turkey houses. How do you select two turkeys?
All butterball turkeys are presidential turkeys. So we just basically, we brooded these turkeys on one of my brooder farms, which is like a nursery for you hog people. And then we moved them to a finishing farm. And when they left the brooder hub, we just selected, 30 turkeys and moved them into the house, and that's where they stayed.
So those 30 then ended up over time being
down to
two
10.
That was delegates.
Yes, well, we had 10. We actually carried Governor Cooper 2 also. He got 2. And then we selected 2 to carry to Trump. So our governor got 2 and our president got 2.
So now you did a similar presentation to the governor?
Yes. It was not quite as a grand of a deal as the White House, and that's because this was only the second year we did it. We did it last year, and I did it again this year. So it's coming. We're getting into it. We're very excited about it. Our governor was very accommodating and very welcoming, and it was a good experience. Had a lot of school children there, so we were proud to do the governor and the president.
And I think people probably need to understand that you grow for a company called Butterball, which is headquartered in Garner.
Garner, yes, sir.
I think they process something like 1.3 billion pounds of turkeys.
They are the world's largest poultry company.
Huge processor.
Yeah.
So in the organizational process of this thing, there was a lot of drama in the background just to get you familiar with what to expect and anticipate.
Yes, I had to go through media training. I'm just a regular farmer. I'm not used to being in front of the cameras. This right here is all new to me too. But it was very, very good people. And that's one thing I learned, just being the farmer on the live ops side. Once I got to meet the people on up in the corporate world, these people are just as passionate and compassionate about what I do as I am. Even though they're not there every day getting their hands dirty, they're really, really into ag and really trying to promote ag. And just met a lot of good people. I mean, I was just very impressed with our leadership there. And then I met some people in other companies, Prestige and Nash Johnson from around here, and they're good families and good people, and all the way up from the ladder, all the way down to the farmer. They're just very compassionate, good people, and that's one of the best things I could take from this was just seeing how people from the top to the bottom really care about agriculture.
When you started the process and got it down to the smaller number of birds that you were actually working with, this process that they had you go through and that they were training you for was basically to familiarize those birds with a different kind of environment so they would adjust better, or maybe not be so skittish.
You don't get used to loud noises, and then the turkeys in Raleigh and in Washington were celebrities. You had kids coming up to them wanting to pet them and rub them, and that's just not what a turkey's usually used to. So we just got them acclimated to being a good, friendly bird. That's basically what it was, And then you don't want them to get spooked by any noise or anything. That's the best thing to do. That's have a radio playing. They like classical rock. All of them, they really like classical rock, so they listen to classical rock every day. They listen to NASCAR races, but it was a good experience, and the turkeys did well. All four of them did very, very good. Very good.
When you're doing that, do you see a transition in those birds, like from one week to the next, if they're listening to music or you're, as you mentioned, kicking a volleyball?
Yes,
how do they transition? Do you see them more at ease? Is their reactions not as jerky or
yes, to begin with, they were kind of skittish, skittish, and then all of a sudden there you walk in there and they kind of ignored you. They were in there and they just come up to you. You could sit on a bucket out of bucket. I've still got my bucket. I sit on a bucket there every day, and they just come up to you, and they'd peck at you, and you could rub them, and they'd walk around. I mean, it's like I wasn't there, and that's what you wanted to get them used to. We had them at Trump's press secretary, her office, and there was a fire there. And he was just mesmerized by Butter was just mesmerized by the fire. I mean, he was just really looking at that fire. And if he hadn't been acclimated, I don't know what in the world he would have done. But he was used to being so many different things going on at one time. It didn't bother him.
So their little brain is getting adjusted to that.
Yes.
Now, I guess the big question a lot of folks would have, and you alluded to this, how do you get them adjusted to all of those cameras? Because as I understand it, once you got to D.C. and you had them in the back of a van,
yes, sir,
and those van doors opened, a periphery of cameras, people, noise. I don't know how you adjust. I don't know whether I'd be used to that.
I wasn't. I can promise you that. And I'd been trained by some of the best people there was. But they did great. Like I said, it was just getting used to the loud noises, the shock where they were just not scared of anything. Like I could put them on a table. I had a table. I actually practiced putting them on a table, for Washington and Raleigh. And the feed truck would go by. It didn't bother them a bit. Feed trucks real loud. It sat right there. I had them trained where they just sit right there. And the funny thing about that was, in Washington, I don't know how many people saw it, but Butter did not sit down on a table. First time ever, he did not sit down on a table, and I was just scared to death he was going to jump off and run, So he stood up the whole time, which made good photo ops.
It did.
But it was nerve-wracking for me because I usually put him on the table. I could walk off 10 minutes and come back and he'd sit right on the table. And this time he was standing up and he wouldn't sit down. I was like, oh boy, he might want to leave, and that would have been late night TV. That's what I'm trying to avoid.
Well, you probably got one of the most international views of the back of your head as you were reaching around it. I guess you've been told that.
Casey Britt cuts my hair, and I told her, I said, I'm glad you do a good job cutting my hair because I have the most famous back of the head in America right now.
It was on every newspaper that I can imagine, anything from Washington Post right on around that one shot. So when that happened, you actually reached around because you were not sure?
I was just scared he was going to jump off because, like I said, he normally would sit right down. I could walk off and leave him, but he was excited evidently there, and this was something different, and he was just standing up just at attention. I mean, beautiful photo op, some of the best pictures I've ever seen, of a turkey. And all the pictures with the presidential family and some of the senators and just, people that were there, media. He did just such a great job standing up the whole time, but like I said, it was nerve-wracking for me because I knew if he sat down, he was not going anywhere. Standing up, I didn't know because that was the first time ever.
Well, different presidents, you see different kind of reactions around farm animals and that kind of thing. When I was watching this myself on TV, it seemed that the president and the first lady was very aware that those turkeys were there. They understood what the whole thing was, but there was also this kind of tendency of, I'm going to kind of keep my distance here and let somebody else handle that. But how did they relate relate to that? Talk to us about that.
We dealt with some of Trump's associates there to begin with, and they said that was one of his favorite things to do. I mean, I met with him in the Oval Office, got to go in the Oval Office, and that was an experience on its own. And, got to talk with him a few minutes, and he is a very, very intelligent, very down-to-earth guy. You wouldn't see that, but he is, and he was just excited to be a part of it. I mean, he just that's one time he gloves. It's kind of like Washington kind of takes the boxing gloves off for a few days and lays it down, and everybody gets along. And then after this goes, so it's just a wonderful experience. But he seemed to really like it.
Yeah, and the room that you were set up in, it was inside the White House, correct?
No, we were in the Rose Garden.
You were in the Rose Garden.
Right.
You never actually got in. You didn't do the presentation inside the White House.
No.
It was outside.
We went in his press secretary's office, and then I went into the conference room where he meets all the heads of state and foreign dignitaries.
Right.
And then we moved into the Oval Office, and there I got to meet him and chat with him a few minutes.
But the presentation was in the
Rose Garden, yes.
And you had a table set up out there.
Yes, and if you look right behind where the pictures are, that's his Oval Office, right behind us. That is where we're at. And to the right of the Rose Garden is the portico. You see all the pictures of, I've seen a picture of Kennedy walking down there with his kids. That's where you saw the presidents walking down, because that's the West Wing walking into the main. They walk down that portico, and there's a lot of good photos. We got a good photo of our family walking right for all these presidents over history, not just Trump. I mean, that's what was overwhelming about the White House, is just the amount of history that was there, the amount of presidents that sat behind that desk in that room.
Many people have probably been to the White House. Very few has probably been in the depth of the White House that you just walked into from Keener, North Carolina.
Yeah,
So what I want to do when we come back from this break, I want to kind of get your sense of just the personal feeling that you had and what you saw. I think also you mentioned to me earlier that you actually had the opportunity of meeting the Vice President.
Yes, I did.
And kind of get your sense from just growing up in here, Sampson County and in the area here, and how that impacted you versus what you saw on the media performance, because I think we don't get a good balanced view, and I want to kind of get you to speak to that a little bit as well. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment. We're talking with Wellie Jackson right here in Keener, North Carolina in Sampson County, talking about his trip to Washington, D.C. and North Carolina here to the governor with a couple of birds, bread and butter. Call a friend, stay tuned.
Experiencing slow internet? If you have a fast internet package, the problem is most likely your wireless router. With more devices using Wi-Fi, your wireless router may not be able to deliver the speed and coverage you need. We now have the leading solution to enhance your internet experience. Using small devices in a mesh network, these Wi-Fi appliances cover just about any size home so that all your devices can operate to their fullest potential. Whole home Wi-Fi from Star Communications. Get the most out of your internet connection.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know is on the air. We're coming to you from Star Communications. I want to remind you, not going to reach us, continue to send us messages and communications via our email address, which is weshouldknow@gmail.com. That's weshouldknow@gmail.com. Of course, snail mail or postcards, or drop us a letter or a note about shows you'd like to see, whatever. Use that medium. You can send them to the Post Office Box 1482, Clinton, North Carolina. Post Office Box 1482, Clinton, North Carolina. We're talking with Wellie Jackson. Wellie, you grew up in the area here. We're talking about farming. You are a farmer. You grew up on a farm, as I did, and many people that listen to this show. Your wife works right here in Clinton, a pharmacist. Tara has known her for some time as well. We're talking about your trip. We're talking about not just the trip to Raleigh. A lot of folks say, well, I knew he went to Raleigh, but you also went to Washington, D.C., in the White House, connected with a lot of people. It impacted, from what I've heard you say, it impacted your life in a way that kind of changed your view of everything from the inside looking out. So let's talk about that a bit, and I'd love to kind of cover that on this segment. The experience you had with the President and First Lady, you mentioned to me earlier, it was like you were looking and talking to real people. So.
Oh yes, yeah. What I got to see is what I call behind the curtain. That's basically what I saw. Like they're real people. I mean, I met Democrats and Republicans, and 99.9% of the people I met are good people. The media, kind of portrays one way or the other, and kind of sways our opinion on them. But all these people that I met were very, very, very nice and just normal people. You see us aura of Trump. Now, when he walked in that room, there's an aura about him. I mean, you're talking to the world's most powerful man, in the world.
Pretty big guy, too.
Yeah, and people don't realize how big he is. I mean, he's probably 6'2", 6'3", and broad shoulders, just a big man, And his wife is very tall, too. It was amazing how tall they were. From the camera, both of them being so tall, they don't look that tall on TV, but they're very tall people. But very, very nice. And it was kind of got to see a little of the husband-wife interaction there, too, and I was sitting there thinking the whole time, this is the most powerful man in the world, worth billions of dollars, and his wife gives it to him just like mine does. That was just, it was nice just to see that, you see he's the president, but he's a person that's the president. And I kind of got to see that, too. The same thing with Cooper. We got to speak to Cooper. Cooper invited us into his house, and we got to talk to him for probably 15, 20 minutes, just like you and I are talking. And that was eye-opening, too. It really was. It was refreshing to see these politicians are not robots. They're people. They put on a persona, and we kind of get swayed by the way the media does them. But they're just people like us, and they're passionate about what they do. Their aim of passion might be a little different than ours, but they're still passionate about what they believe in.
You mentioned that, and alluding back to your comment about First Lady and the President, I think you mentioned that she kind of called him out because he was not throwing something in the
He didn't
trash.
have his trash can was out from under his desk. So she told him, said, need to move the trash can so we can get the picture made with Wellie.
Because she didn't want the trash can in the picture.
It was out of the way. He wanted, why do your trash can's supposed to be in the desk, Donald? Move the trash can. I was just like, wow, that's just a typical.
All of us couldn't relate to that.
No, it's just a typical, husband and wife interaction. Something like Tara would tell me. So it was just refreshing to see that, And then as I was walking into the conference room at the White House, there's a staircase that comes up. And I didn't pay a lot of attention to it, from the basement. And so I was just walking, and it's a big hall, two people, and I happened to look. It was Mike Pence. And me being just typical Wellie, I said, how are you doing? And he said, how are you doing? So
the Vice President of the United States comes by, and you just happened to catch him out of the corner?
He just happened to, we were coming, and he kind of came beside me, and I didn't really pay attention to who it was. I just happened to look and see who it was, because he said he's a pretty tall guy, too. And I looked at him, and I just, saw and knew who it was. I said, how are you doing? He said, how are you doing? I said, can I shake your hands? By all means. And he was like, we appreciate what you farmers do. Appreciate you bringing the turkey. It's a wonderful looking bird and all that. And then he said, I hope you enjoy your stay in Washington. Hope you can stay a few days and enjoy yourself, So I was like, well, thank you. And I just kind of stopped, I'm just like, wow, I'm just, and by that time the Secret Service just, excuse me, sir. So I got put back in my place right quick, So it was.
Well, you got a photo op with the Vice President, didn't you?
No, just the President, the President. We were just walking, and he stopped and shook my hand and spoke to me a few seconds, and he was gone, and I went into the conference room, and I didn't see him anymore.
Give us your personal reflections on what you saw and felt with the Vice President, because a lot of people have not seen him in person as well.
He is a very, you get the sense of a very, very honorable man. I mean, just a good man. He is I told Tara, he's like, I used to watch Johnny Quest in the Sunday mornings before church, and it was a little cartoon. And I cannot think of that guy's name, but he worked for the professor. And he was chiseled, white-haired, just, had his stuff together, always kind of like the superhero. And that's why Mike Pence is kind of like a superhero. I mean, he is as put together as any man I've ever seen in my life. I mean, he is, and a good man. I mean, he just, the way he talks. The way he talks. When you're around someone, you kind of get a kind of feeling about it. I mean, he took time to stop and talk. Everybody just stopped, to speak to me for a few minutes. He didn't have to do that. He could just kept on walking on. But, I mean, he wanted to make sure he spoke to me, and then he went on his way, and I went on mine. But that was an experience.
Well, now, was this your first time in the White House?
Yes, first time. Yes.
So you got that experience of the West Wing. You got the experience of the photographs, the kind of the aura and I guess the dignity of the historical impact of history right there in that White House. Give us your sense of that once you experienced all that and then had time to reflect on it.
Well, you get there and you're kind of excited to meet the President of the United States. But then when you get into Rose Garden, you start looking around, you think about all the presidents and all the presidents' kids that were playing in that Rose Garden where my kids were at. I mean, it was just amazing. From Lincoln, to Kennedy, some of the best presidents, and and then Truman, it's just. It kind of, all of a sudden, you just got a feeling like, this is something really, really special. It's just not a tour, you're just not here. But just to look at the Oval Office and all the big major decisions that were made in that office, and that desk is not his desk, they reused desks. So I don't know which desk he's got. I have not researched that, but I was just thinking all the just people that were the great people in the history of the world sat behind that desk, standing right where I was. It was just, you know, it was just, I don't know that I've really taken it all in yet, you know. And then I was just sitting there in our seat, because we had our seats with our names on them, and you look around, you see the main White House, that, like I said, that portico, and like pulling up, they let us walk around outside and see, and, you know, just thinking about all the great people that have walked on these steps, sat in here, and that was very overwhelming. I know my kids still haven't taken it all in yet, because I don't know that I have. But it's just, it was just an amazing experience.
And I think what I hear you saying is what now in today's world, because of today's environment, historically, several decades ago, you could go to D.C., park your car, get out, walk up to the White House, go in the White House. Very few people will get to experience what you experience. So I'm hearing you say that there's a lot of things there that transcends all the political gyrations we're hearing. That's much deeper and much more relevant. And I want to try to get a feel for that relevancy to everybody, no matter whether you're loading sweet potatoes or whether you're fixing to go into surgery. You know, it's something that we as a society sometimes overlook, as you mentioned, because we get so many skewed views.
Yes. Well, I mean, when I was in there, you know, like I said, all of a sudden it just took you by surprise, you know, the feeling you got there. Look back at your history, all the big major decisions were made right here where I was at, you know. I mean, that's what was just wow, you know, because you walk in there and you see the doors that don't have doorknobs on them, that you just see the outline of the door. I mean, there's a lot of them in there. But just imagine the people that have walked through these doors, you know, stood where I stood at. I mean, you forget that Democrat, Republican, you're just all of a sudden American. I mean, it just, any political aspirations, whatever, which party you are, it's gone. You just walk in there and you're just an American, you know, just really, really taken away by the amount of history that's there at that building. It was amazing. And, you know, like you said, you could drive right up there. The security getting into it was absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it was wild. It was worth the price of admission just to see how you have to get into place and what steps you have to go through. We were somewhere a couple of days after we got back, and they were talking about it, and I said, I can promise you this, Tara and I and the kids are the safest people in this place. We've had all sorts of background checks. I'm talking about we are safe. If there's anybody in this building that's safe, it's us.
And all those background checks and things were done weeks and months before you even got there.
Oh, this was a
probably
process
people were maybe even been in Keener, North Carolina, looking around.
There is absolutely no telling. That's what people said. There's no telling who was watching you and wherever. You know, every helicopter you hear going over, are they looking at us or whatever? But it was it was experience, because the first time you go through there, you go through a gate in the car. We had a car with the turkeys in the back, and or SUV, and you get in there and you got to give them your driver's license and make sure you're on the list. And you're on the list, you go to the next station. You get to the next station, they've got a dog. And the dog had never seen live turkeys before, so it was carried away with that. So, but you open up the doors and everything, the dog sniffs the car. They've got mirrors going in the car. Then you go to the third and final one. You get out of the car, and they've got a list of everything in that car. And if there's a bag of potato chips in there, it's not on that list, in the trash can it goes. I mean, they are very, very.
It's worse than the airport.
Yes, the airport's nothing. Yes, and but you know the security guard, the secret police, or whatever I don't know exactly the Secret Service. I don't know if that was exactly what they ordered as Washington Police, or I don't know exactly what they were. But they are at a level that I have never seen before, professional and personal. I mean, they this wasn't their first rodeo. They knew what they were doing. I mean, they were very accommodating. They made it very, actually, it was fun, interesting, how they did it and how they would socialize with each other.
You get caught up in watching what they're doing.
Yeah, just watching what they were doing, and that was an experience just to get in there. And then you drive in and you drive up to the front of the White House. And I mean, that's just a ride very few people get to make. And that was just, it was awesome just to be able to see it. And when you pull in there, you've got a guard with you everywhere you go. And I had a Marine captain, a lady with me, when I got, after the Secret Service police gets us up there in terms of, then everybody's got their guard with them. Very, very, she's a Pentagon Marine, very intelligent, probably one of the most intelligent people I have ever met, but she was so misinformed about ag. Yeah. So I got to spend probably 30, 45 minutes with her and a lot of her colleagues in that conference room, and they were asking me very intelligent questions, and I hope I opened their eyes as much as my eyes got opened in Washington, how things work, but it was very, she liked, it's amazing how intelligent but misinformed they were.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to follow up on that information piece and trying to inform people about ag that maybe knows something about it, but not a lot of details. So we'll talk about that when we come back. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. Be with us on the next two segments. This is halfway the show. Wellie Jackson's with us. We're talking about ag as a whole, but particularly his trip to D.C. Call a friend. Stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment.
You come out to replace a bad sensor, and that has a 5-year commitment to my contract, and you don't tell me? Here's your sign.
Switch to the sign that's keeping homes secure and customers happy all over the area. Security from Star Communications. We pride ourselves on fair pricing and quick, friendly service every time.
Somebody trying to break into this place?
Security from Star Communications.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Again, thank you for being with us. About halfway to the show today. We're talking with Wellie Jackson from the beautiful metropolis of Keener, North Carolina, right here in Sampson County. We're talking about ag as a whole. We're talking about the trip to D.C. We're talking about turkeys. When we talk about turkeys, we're talking about approximately 34,000 jobs in North Carolina alone.
Yes, sir.
We're looking at about an $8.5 billion industry. And I think about those numbers, and I look at the total industry for North Carolina, maybe somewhere in the $30+ billion if you include everything in it. A lot of this is a pretty big deal, Wellie, when you think about what ag is doing, what the impact is. The financial is unbelievable, but the other side is, and this is a side that I call kind of the touchy-feely side, for an example, but a lot of these exports are feeding people all over the world that is nowhere close to the fortunate food access we have. Kind of give us a feel from the view of the farmer on the front lines, what your sense is for that, and what we need to do to kind of change this message where people start seeing the bigger picture.
Well, you know, I've always, one of my little sayings I have is, you know, if it wasn't for hogs, turkeys, and chickens, and cows too, we'd be on dirt roads riding in buggies in Sampson County. I know when I go pay my property tax, and I'm just one of many of the, you know, the contract farmers in the county, what I pay. And the time you take all these other people put together, that's a pretty good lick, you know, for Sampson County. And then you take that away, it'd be ridiculous the amount of money that we would lose, you know. And then not to mention that, like I was talking about the feed truck, you got feed truck drivers, you've got Shavitz truck drivers, you know, you've got the live haul guys, you've got the turkey loaders, you know, then you've got people in the office, you've got servicemen, and then you also have like the truck dealerships, you know, the tractor dealerships, you know, it goes around, and then you've got, you know, the people that work there get their car serviced, they get their hair cut, you know, they got money to do that, you know, go to the grocery store, go visit my wife at the pharmacy, you know. If all that's gone, I mean, we're in a sad shape now. I mean, you know, you can work at RTP and, you know, in Raleigh and say, well, I don't have anything to do with ag, but you can draw a line, like 6 degrees of separation. You can end up in North Carolina, you will end up where some of your money comes from something in ag. There's just no way around it. And we're blessed to have these integrators here in North Carolina, because farming is really, out west where they don't have integrators, they're really suffering. And you know, the integrators, farming is a tough business right now, but the integrators, this contract growing has kind of kept a lot of us afloat. You know, I just shudder where our schools would be, our, you know, county, state government would be, our fire departments. I'm on the fire department there. Hogs, turkeys, and chickens, and farm in general has bought a lot of fire trucks there. And when your house would catch on fire, or my house would catch on fire, or your neighbor's house would catch on fire, you like to see all that good equipment roll up there, you know, pretty quick, and not have trying to jump a fire truck off a pole. You want to crank, go, and then the people are trained. You know, the community college does a good job training all of us firemen, you know, and we don't have to pay for it. But, you know, somebody's having to pay that instructor and stuff like that. So it's just a, you know, a circle here, but if you take farming out of that circle, it just breaks apart.
One of the things that oftentimes, and I'm not an economic person by any means, and an analytical person by any means, but there's clearly a separation here for folks to understand that we live in a capitalistic environment, that cash flow is critically important. Stock market being up is a very positive thing. When we look at that, and from where you sit each day, and you're looking at your turkeys, and you're growing that product for market, and you've been to D.C. and we've talked a bit off camera about some of the folks you met up there, and they were asking questions. And as you said, oftentimes it's clear they don't understand the grassroots thing. How do we reach those people in a better way? I know of course, Corporate Extension and other places continue to educate folks, and we take for granted a lot of times that folks that live next door to us understand it. But I'm not sure that we need to do that.
You know, one of the things I have seen, because it's unfiltered, it's unfiltered, is YouTube. There is a lot of good ag people on YouTube right now, and you know, you see it yourself. You draw your own conclusion. It's not scripted. It's not anything else. And I have really started watching some of these guys on there, and they've kind of got me excited about what they're doing. There's a guy in Minnesota, the Millennial Farmer. He is very, very pro-ag and kind of family farm, you know, the trials, tribulation, the good, the bad, and all that, what goes on. And there's several others. And they do it in an entertaining way where, you know, it's people that are not in the ag, you can read the comments, they watch it. And so people like that are starting to educate. But if we could get the media to really get behind us and really understand how crucial agriculture is to, you know, to the United States. You know, you're talking about Los Angeles and watch these people that have never seen any grass before. Still, they have to eat. They have no idea where their food comes from. No idea. I just wish we could get the media in. Let's start showing these people this is what the farmer does every day. You know, this is a 7-day-a-week job. What he does and how the food actually is raised. Not you go to your Publix or your Kroger or your Harris Teeter, and it's there. It just miraculously appears. You take it away, and the next day, look, it comes back again. You know, and you know, you and I were talking about years ago. We were, you know, agriculture was king. You know, most of the people deal with agriculture, and everybody knew about it. And now we've kind of got away with that. But agriculture itself has still got that mentality that everybody knows, and they don't. You know, there is a very big disconnect between the urban and the rural population now. And even, you know, even the rural population, there's a lot of people in Sampson County don't know what I do or how to do. You ride down the road and there's a cotton. What is that? How do you pick it? You know, sweet potatoes. You know, that's amazing. You know, and then all the vegetables. You know, like the Birches and Doug Wilson grow vegetables. You know, and it's just amazing that people don't ride by and say, what is that? It's an eggplant bush. You know, and these are people that have lived here all their life. We're not, we've got to start here in Sampson County and get everybody here educated and then let it spread out from there. You know, in other counties, Duplin, Bladen, Wayne, the same thing, let it start, you know, like a spider web out. But we've got to do a better job at home first, look after home, and then let's spread the word.
Well, one of the things I think people probably don't understand, and maybe they think they do, but you have to invest a lot financially, not only in property and collateral and money, to be part of the Butterball operation as a grower. Some folks will look at you clearly and say, put everything on the line financially. And when you do that, that's a big risk.
Yes.
And you had to go through, I'm sure, a lot of analysis in your mind to say, I'm going to put all these turkey houses up and I'm investing, I don't know how many million, but you've got quite a few $1 million invested. Tell us about that process, because I want folks to understand, this is not something you say, well, I'm going to do this week. If I don't particularly like it, I'm going to do something else.
You're in it because, like, you know, I was on, you know, I'm 5th generation farmland. You know, my dad didn't farm; he was in the military, and then he worked for the county. And my granddad was in the fertilizer and tobacco business. You know, had tobacco warehouses and fertilizer warehouses, but we still always farmed. You know, I mean, we had somebody farming at the land. I even farmed when I was old enough to drive a tractor. I started farming, you know, we've got to do, you know, when you sit there, it's like, the funniest thing was, I told somebody when all this was going on, I built 10 houses to begin with on 3 separate sites. And
how many turkeys per house does that give us?
Well, the brooder farm, there was 2 brooder houses at the time. They wanted to build what they call a wheel. So there was 2 brooder houses. We put 16,000 each one of those. And I had 4 finishing houses each one of those. And we moved the 32,000 to the 4. And then we'd start the brooder go again, and then go back to this right here, back and forth, back and forth. And when I first started, I was a one-man show. I mean, it was just me. So to begin with, you had the first house and all that. It was not bad looking after the 2, but then it got moved to the 4, and then you got to come over here and wash the 2, get these 2 ready to set up while still looking after the 4. And then these moved back over here, so now you've got 8 looking after, and you got to get these 2 back ready to go there. And then as soon as you get in place, you got to get these now the 4 go out. And start. I was like the man, you know, the dog chasing the car. I've caught the thing. What in the world am I going to do with it? I mean, I was like, boy, this is, you know, but the Lord, you know, He gives you nothing more that you can't handle. And but that was a lot to handle.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
And my
you don't
wife,
take off on weekends,
well,
do you?
but, you know, back then it was 7 days a week, and luckily my wife grew up on a hog farm, so she kind of knew it. Her dad had done it. She kind of knew what she was getting into when she married me, you know, and it was she went through a lot there. I mean, it was 7 days a week. Wellie didn't leave. We didn't go anywhere. We didn't do anything for years. You know, it was just like I said. And it was work. Tara helped me. You know, family members helped me. Had a lot of friends come over and help me. You know, get it started. Because I mean, it was just there was, you know, like I said, the input there was so much. There was no money to hire a lot of people, so you just did it yourself. And I mean, you just grinned and bared it and went on with it. And that gives you a new appreciation of what I have done. You know, it's not like mom and dad just handed me the farm and here you go and start looking after it. I mean, I started with nothing and built it up, and that's, you know, kind of been, you know, satisfying just to see it. And one of the Lewis Gilmore, from the send off, he was there, and he said, "Well, it has been a lot of fun to see how you have made this grow." And you know, I had never thought about that until that one point, and he kind of just, you know, I was kind of, you know, just a point in my life, I was like, wow, you know, I didn't even realize.
Well, sometimes you don't have time to reflect because you're so busy trying to keep the
just
machine going.
Yeah, and you know. And that's why kid now is like, you know, somebody, well, you don't go with them every day and you don't drag the turkeys out. I said, no, I'm the grease to go between the cogs now. You know, I can just make sure everything's turning smooth now, you know. But used to, I was the cogs and the grease. And we did it. And like I said, it was just, you know, you get put with a task and it's, you know, sink or swim. You know, this was family land, you know, generations land. I was sure I'm not going to lose it. So, I mean, it's just work. And that's what we did. Nowadays, it's still as much work, but it's a different type of work. It's a lot more now book work, thinking, and trying to decide and make sure, you know, Farm A is doing this, Farm B is doing that, Farm C is doing that now. Different type of work, more thinking, more stressful than that. But you're right. You put everything you got online. I mean, I've talked to several young guys doing this, and I was like, good luck to you. I hope it works out for you and all that. And I go home and say, man, I wouldn't do it now at my age for nothing, you know. But, you know, they're young and it'll work out. But there was a lot of scary nights. I mean, a lot of scary nights doing this, sure was.
We're going to take a break. We're going to come back for the last segment of this show. But as we come back, I want to kind of put a teaser out there, and I want to tell folks we're going to try to talk a bit about some of those basic principles that folks that get into ag today and sustaining ag need to understand going in, and maybe it'll help folks better understand the path and the kinds of things that you would face.
That's right.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment. We're talking Wellie Jackson, successful farmer here in Sampson County. We're talking about ag, the importance of ag to you, to your family, and everyone you know. We'll be back in a moment. Stay tuned.
To get the most out of your electronic devices, you need a strong internet connection and a protected home Wi-Fi network. You need high-speed internet from Star. Star has the fastest, most affordable high-speed internet service available for all your devices. We have no long-term contracts or high-pressure sales. Our service speaks for itself, and switching is hassle-free. We take care of everything with free installation from a local company. High-speed internet from Star. Internet at the speed of life.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know is on the air. We're coming up on our last segment today. Each and every Tuesday at 2:30, we come to you on Star Communications Channel 16, WCLN Radio. If you're driving down the road and want to listen to something, dial it at 2:30 at WCLN, 1170 AM. Also in the Sampson Weekly newspaper, a summation of the show. Today we're talking ag. We're talking particularly about turkeys. We've talked about bread and butter. We're talking with Wellie Jackson, who is a turkey grower right here in Sampson County. Wellie, we've talked about your experience in Washington, D.C. We could probably spend 2 or 3 shows just talking about that because there's so many questions I've got. But when we're doing, again, TV shows, this is pretty much gives us a big in-depth compared to a lot of shows people see. But we've moved to that arena of agriculture, and I'll call it the existence of mankind. It's so tied to our ability to exist as human beings because we're talking about fundamentally the consumer, the consuming of ag products. Again, as you talked about earlier, whether it's peanuts, potatoes, chickens, poultry, pork, whatever, it's what keeps us alive. It's what keeps us going. When we look at that from your experience, and you're in that perfect kind of age bracket as a millennial that you can see folks my age and older, you can look back and see people now trying to come along and thinking, do I want to try to keep this farm going? Do I want to pick up where maybe my parents were and do this, or do I want to move to a metropolitan area? I particularly like to welcome back folks to Sampson County.
Yes.
So help us understand some of those key principles that you faced as a farmer, transcending what your parents, well actually your grandparents did, directly related to ag, and what you decided to do, and how that was done, how that process worked. Where was the biggest anxiety moments for you?
Well, when I've always wanted to farm my whole life. If there was a tractor moving, well, it was on it. I never thought I'd be in the turkey business. But I had an opportunity and I took it. I figured that was my easiest way to get into the ag, and it was. And that's probably the easiest way now is to get if you can get a contract, they're hard to get. Like I said, there's a lot of capital involved with buying a hog farm or a chicken farm or a turkey farm or anything. I mean, you got to have a lot of very, very bankers that are got a lot of trust in you.
Yeah, and you get into immediately. I mean, people sometimes, I think back during my day with hogs as a young boy, if you had a fence you could put up and get 5 or 6 hogs, but now you're starting out in the millions of dollars.
Oh yes, and then you've got a concrete building there. If you put a fence up, you can take it down and go back to whatever you were doing. That building is there. It's on your family land. It's not going anywhere. Or you hope it don't. I mean, it's there, and you don't want to lose that. So it's just But I can remember, like I said, that first night that I placed turkeys at that first farm, I was laying in bed, I couldn't sleep. I was like, what have I done? It's like, oh boy, I've got something on me now.
It's a weight.
Looking at the road. Yes, I mean, it's very, very rewarding. Don't get me wrong, it is very rewarding, but it's tough. Now, this is a tough business. I mean, it is a tough business. I have been through some, we were talking about earlier, some just disasters, just absolute disasters, and you've got to just pull your boots back up and go again and fight it. It's not going to be rosy every day. Farming is very, very cyclical, and even in what I do, it's not as near up and down as the grain markets and the sweet potatoes and the tobacco people, but still, you have a good flock, you can have a bad flock. You can have 80 houses blow down like I did one time. You can have it 105 degrees and lose a bunch of turkeys. It's just it's just the nature of the beast. You've really got to be dedicated to do it. I mean, a farmer's just a different breed, and and these guys that do the grain with this rain, this weather we've had here past. I really respect them. I mean, they've had an absolute time with the weather just last couple of years.
One of the things you mentioned I think is important for folks to understand is that when you look at farming today with what you do, or whether it's hogs or chickens, whatever, poultry or livestock, it's part of a system. So there's the grower, there's the integrator, then you've got the processor. Yes. All of those have to come together almost in this perfect kind of world of working unilaterally together.
Yes.
So as the grower, if you're talking to somebody saying, well, have you thought about getting into ag? Have you thought about coming back to the eastern part of the state where ag is big? Talk to us about that as a grower and how you have to make sure that you're paired with the right integrator. You're paired with Butterball.
Yes.
And they have, as we talked about, their own processing. There are other folks out there that are integrators in the poultry business. And you could probably call many more names off the cuff than I can. If a person's thinking about that, how do they look at it because it is a life experience. You're living it. You're not just going to work. You're living this. So how do they look at selecting that, and why did you end up with Butterball?
Well, what first you've got to do is you need to go talk, and actually need to go work on a farm. That's what you need to do, talk and talk to somebody that's there. Talk to somebody that's been doing it a few years. Don't just go talk to the integrator, talk to somebody that has to do it. Talk to somebody that's been doing it years, where they've had the bad and the good, not just the good. A lot of times you just get told the good, not the bad, And you need to plan for the bad and expect the bad. And then when it's good, that's just gravy on top of the cake.
That's time to rejoice.
That's it. But if you go ahead and set up your plan for being below average, and then you strive to be above average, then when you're above average, you're gaining foothold. And then when you're below average, which you will be, you're still on your path. And that's what a lot of people nowadays mistake. They try to plan for the excellent, and overlook that it's going to go down. So that's the first thing I would say is you need to, if you're going to do a cash flow or something, plan on below average, and then you can it'll work. It'll work.
Because when you look at that cash flow, in most situations, you're looking anywhere from a 10 to 15 year quote, what oftentimes is referred to as a payout.
Yes.
Well, even with that, then you've got to continually replace equipment, upgrade the buildings, and heaven forbid if folks face what you face, which many people hasn't, but you have what's referred to as straight line winds or whatever come through and just demolish a number of your houses. How do you recover from that? And because the bills, the quote, as the old saying goes, the bank's still expecting their money, but yet your house is on the ground.
Well, that's why you plan for the below average. And luckily, I'd been above average for so long, then you could kind of suck back down. Now we're way below average, but we kind of even itself out. And that's what you've got to do is just plan ahead for bad things to happen, And then you look at the price of a truck, a pickup. If you're financing something for 15 years, you look at 15 years ago what a truck cost versus now.
That's right.
So you can kind of figure on what your expenses are going to cost in 15 years. They're going to go up, and if your pay is the same, and you're already kind of, nose to the grindstone, you're going to have a tough go at it, there's so many updates. Look how much further along your vehicle is from the 15 years ago vehicle. I mean, I've got two Suburbans, and they're about 15 years apart. I drive one at the farm and one of them hauling the kids around, and it's amazing the difference in the technology in them. It's also amazing what one costs and what the other costs.
And the same thing with your turkey houses.
Yes, and that's the same thing, and you have to update them. You're having to constantly update. You just like, rebuilding your motor in your car, your transmission, or putting a new oven in your house, or putting a new air conditioner. That's what we're doing there, and you got to figure on those costs too. So it's rewarding, but it's something you just don't need to wake up in the morning and say, well, I think I'll get into the livestock business or farming in general. It's just because once you're set, you're set. I mean, even you go into you build a farm and you build on a piece of land that you bought and it has no ties to your family. You're not going to get as much for it as what you paid into that thing. That's correct. If in a year or two you decide you don't want this thing, you're in financial. It's hurt you. So you need to make sure this is what you want to do.
What do you say here today if there happens to be grandparents listening, or folks your age, or maybe even folks younger than you are, and those folks younger than you are thinking, well, I'm going to be out of college before long, or I'm not sure whether I'm going to college, but I might want to get into ag. I want to follow what I heard Wellie Jackson say on We Should Know. I want to kind of get into that. I think that's interesting to me. How do you get them to understand that there's a process that you just can't, as you just pointed out, go out and do that, but at the same time they have to understand there's things that they're going to have to do that's totally beyond saying, well, I'm off this weekend, let's go to the beach and hang out, because it's not a, quote, regular 40-hour-a-week job.
I had a lot of older growers that really helped me, and that's one good thing with ag. Your people that have been in are very receptive to young people. The young people need to come up and ask the people that have been in it a long time, and if they will ask, the older people will help. I have never seen a farmer not help another farmer.
They'll literally show them.
That is the difference in our occupation there. Yes, we're kind of all trying to, grow the best crop and all that, but when it comes down to helping somebody else, they just lay down their stuff and go help. It's just a different occupation. And that's what we want young people to come in there. We want young people to start this stuff. I'm 47 now. We've got to soon get younger people to come in to this thing. But like I said, come talk to some of these older guys. Older people than me, that helped. But I had a lot of good people. Doug Wilson, Gerald and George Warren, Ray Pate, and there was just several people that have been, in farming for years that came up and this is what you do, this is what you do, this is how it's going to be, and this is going to be the good, the bad, and this is what you kind of expect. And it was, so I had a lot of help. I really did. And that's one thing the older generation will sure help the younger generation, because they want farming to continue like it's going on, and they know the only way to do that is the younger kids coming in and taking over.
We've got it's a major industry. It's one of those things that you've talked about how important it is. Folks that, again, go to the grocery store depend on you and many other people to supply those shelves. If we don't do that, we could be in huge trouble looking down 10, 15, 20, even 4 decades from now. Yeah,
the median age of the farmer keeps going up, and I hope what I've said here is not scaring anybody off.
Right.
It's just, I want you to know what you're getting into when you do it. It's probably there's no other field that's as rewarding as farming, but there's probably no field that's as tough either, because you're putting your assets on the line to do it. But we need young people. I hope we get a lot of young people, smart people. There's a lot of smart people out there nowadays. Farming is so far ahead of the grain farming for what I do. You know, the combines drive themselves, the tractors drive themselves, sprayers drive themselves. You know, it takes smart people to do it, and we need smart people.
Wellie, I want to thank you for being with us today and talking about some of the things in Washington, D.C. and what we need to be doing in ag, what we need to be promoting in the communities we live in. We appreciate you being here, and we look forward to having you back sometime in the future.
Yes, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us today. We look forward to seeing you again next week, right here, same time. And if you will, always remember those folks that's passed on that are farmers, others that are continuing to support farmers. And as always, we look at you and
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host J.W. Simmons. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion regarding this or any episode, please send your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.